Welcome to
New York City.
Pinstripe Territory.
Just when they thought I was out, they pull me back in.
All right. Welcome back, everybody, and welcome back to Max Goodman, Yankees beat writer for NJ.com. Right after he got back from Yankee Stadium, had to rush to make it for the podcast. How you doing, man?
I'm good. Yeah, the workout today was a little longer than I thought it was going to be. I got there before 1 o'clock when the Royals started their section of the workout at 1. Wanted to do my due diligence, see what Bobby Witt Jr. had to say, and then the Yankees didn't start until they had a couple interviews at like 3 something. Then their workout started at 5, but then it just lingered on, and they did some live BPs, which I'm sure you guys saw some clips on Twitter that me or some other reporters posted. And then Clubhouse opened up, and then we hear that Anthony Rizzo is not going to be on the roster. So I got to whip something up really quickly and then hustle to the D train and got myself home. So I made it on time. That's all that matters, but it's been a long day for sure.
I hadn't heard that was official yet. As I told you in the green room, I've been watching Kill Bill for the last 3 hours, and one doesn't simply stop watching Kill Bill once one has started. So I missed out on the Rizzo news. So that's interesting. We'll talk more about first base in a few minutes, but just from watching the team this week, being at all the workouts, what are you seeing in their prep? Obviously, the 5-day layoff is kind of a talking point, at least for the Braves it is. They lost after having the 1 seed a couple of times. Didn't seem to be much of an issue for the Astros the last few years, but they didn't fare well in the wild card round this year. So how are boys looking?
Yeah, that's going to be a narrative, I think, if they come out and look sloppy tomorrow, either way, no matter what. But they've certainly been trying their best to stay ready and good to go. I mean, we were in there today on Friday as well as on Tuesday. Wednesday and Thursday were just Zoom calls and closed to the media at the stadium. But they've been doing a lot of sim games, a lot of defensive drills on the field, some PFPs for pitchers, regular batting practice on the field. And, they've got all their gizmos and gadgets underneath they're going to do in the cage and weight room and all that good stuff. So no stone is unturned. I'm sure they're having a lot of meetings and getting ready because they knew ahead of time it was going to be KC a little earlier than if Baltimore forced a third game. And they saw that team not too long ago, just a couple of weeks ago at the stadium. They know what to expect a little bit there. And I don't think that they're going to use the layoff as an excuse, right? You go in, you're able to set your pitching staff up. You can make those decisions, give Rizzo and LeMahieu a little more time to see if they're ready to go. It doesn't seem like either of them are going to be on the roster. I'd be surprised if LeMahieu gets on as much as he's been out there these last couple of days. But yeah, I mean, it seems like they're good to go, right? Everyone's been talking about how excited they are. They want to feel the atmosphere of some of the new faces, like a Juan Soto, for instance. And, Garrett Cole was giddy about getting that game 1 start when he talked to us today. Aaron Judge spoke about not having that championship, not having that October moment just yet. And he feels like it's on him and a failure whenever the Yankees don't win a championship. So the pressure's on, right? You got to go out and do it now. It's enough talk. Starting tomorrow night, whatever they do, it's either a success or a failure if they don't get to the World Series or if they do, as far as I'm concerned.
I want to start off with the pitching. Is Jake Cousins, you think, going to be on the roster? Because we've heard that he could be ready, but it's been kind of up in the air. Obviously coming back from a pectoral issue, but he was a huge part of the Yankees bullpen moving down the stretch. One of the few swing and miss guys that they've really had in the second half. Any word on whether or not he's going to actually be in the Yankees bullpen for the division series?
It seems like he's good to go. That was the update from today. Unless something happened when he was throwing that we didn't know about. We didn't get any sort of update later in the day, but when we talked to Boone earlier in the afternoon, it sounded like he was good to go. And you said it, man, he was a high leverage option for them, even in the 9th inning at different points. So I'd put him on that short list as long as he's able to, recapture that form after not being out there for a couple weeks. Yeah. The short list of Luke Weaver, Clay Holmes, Tommy Kahnle's had a good year. Tim Hill's actually been pretty good as one of the few lefties. I think that Boone's going to trust any of those names. You throw Cousins in there as well as a late inning option. But, I'm very curious to see how the bullpen does. I know we weren't going to necessarily talk about that too much, but that could end up being a weakness for them, maybe lose them a game. Or on paper, I mean, they do have enough upside arms to really have that be a strength going forward over these next couple of weeks. But, the rotation's got to play well. Offense has to play well. It's got to be that comprehensive effort, and there's a lot of moving parts.
Any thoughts on who the Yankees are leaning towards in Game 3 on the starting side? I know that Heel and Schmidt are both kind of in the conversation. Do you have any kind of insight on which way they're leaning?
It seems like they're going to have those two available over those first two games, and depending on how Cole and Rodon pitch, they might go to a Clark Schmidt in the middle innings to kind of bridge the gap. If it were me, I'd probably just have Heel go in Game 3, just because he doesn't have any bullpen experience, and you can kind of have a quick hook on him if the command issues are out there right away. You put him in a big spot, and if he can't find the zone, then you're screwed to a certain extent. He's got to face the 3 hitters. He doesn't have any bullpen experience, like I said. At least if he's a starter, he can go through his normal routine. He can prep for who he's going to face. He can go out there and do his best. Maybe you have Schmidt also available in Game 3 if he doesn't pitch. But my main takeaway in terms of the rotation is this team has to win Game 1. I know that's kind of elementary analysis, right? You want to go out and win Game 1, but against Michael Wacha with the 2 starters for the Royals that are looming, when you have your ace going in Game 1, and like I said earlier, you reset your pitching staff, everybody's healthy and ready to go, you have to take care of business right now, because if you're in that 0-1 hole and Reagans and Lugo are lined up on normal rest and ready to go when they have all the momentum from that last start. I know the Yankees did get to see them recently, so maybe that helps a little bit. But those two are formidable. And quite frankly, Wacha is no cakewalk either. I know he hasn't had too much success in the playoffs, but he's had the number of quite a few Yankees, certainly Aaron Judge, which tonight I got to go through and I want to see how indicative that 1 for 18 really is. Maybe he's hit the ball hard more and the results are a little bit skewed in one way or another. But I asked Cole about Wacha today, and he reminded all of us that Wacha almost threw a no-hitter against his Pirates when he was back with the Cardinals. So he's very experienced out there, and he's going to mix speeds and try to keep these guys off balance. But you have to win Game 1. I know it's very simple, but that's where I'm at.
Before we move on to left field, are there any updates on Nestor Cortez Jr.? Obviously struggling with the elbow injury, but there was some talk that he could be ready for the playoffs. Maybe not the ALDS, but maybe the ALCS if they get there.
Right. I haven't heard anything else. He was out there today kind of just mingling with some of his teammates. I'd be very surprised if we see him even in the ALCS. I mean, maybe they can just try to have him work through it and do some treatment, get a PRP or a cortisone or something like that just to get back in time. But when you have a flexor like injury like this, it's typically more of a long-term ordeal. And going into an off season, you probably don't want to risk it becoming anything more significant. And then he misses all of next year, worst case, which, hopefully doesn't happen for him. He's had an up and down season, but he's been a workhorse for them this year. So it is a big blow if he's not able to go. And I think they would have loved having an additional lefty out there that would have been able to give them some length and be battle tested, mess with timing. You know how Nestor can really find a groove like that. So it is a hole in their bullpen. I don't necessarily think Marcus Stroman's going to fill that hole as the other stretched out starter that's not in the rotation. I don't really see him making the roster as of now. There's no need for another starter. And if you can just stack up the more traditional relievers with the days off in a division series, only a best of 5, they should be fine. I mean, it was even talked about that they would have only 11 pitchers rather than the 12-14 split. And in that case, you can put a Duke Ellis on the roster where his role is only pinch running in the 9th inning or whatever it is. And he was out there today. So clearly he's in consideration, if not probably going to make it.
Interesting. Let's talk a little bit about the question on everybody's mind, which is left field. I know you've been watching. How do our boys look? How does Dominguez look out there? How does Verdugo look? Any indications, any kind of wink and nod from Aaron Boone towards one of these guys?
It's been wait and see mode for a couple weeks now, right? I mean, Dominguez didn't really set the world on fire after getting called up, and Verdugo kind of started to find a little bit of a rhythm as much as he had some dink and dunk hits there, and it's been a really down year for him as a whole. But we were talking about this before going live. I think this may just come down to the fact that Dominguez has been a liability in left recently, and there are some plays that really stand out to you when you think of his performance out there where that's not a position he's as experienced. He's a center fielder coming up, and when you have Garrett Cole, who sometimes gives up home runs, a lot of fly balls, Carlos Rodon, one of the most pitchers who's given up one of the most home runs in all of baseball this year, he's going to give up some fly balls. Do you want someone out there in left who might not catch it on, like you said earlier, Derek, a windy night? high fly ball down the line. Is he going to make that catch? I think that they may go with Verdugo. I'm not entirely sure. I think that the upside play is definitely Dominguez because of the offense. And I'm also curious to see how they handle Grisham because, I've gone through the iterations of how this roster can look.
Right.
Sometimes I feel like he doesn't have a place on this team, but also he goes out there and he cranks a homer right at the end of the year. And you're like, man, why didn't they try to give him a shot in center maybe and put Judge left a couple weeks ago or months ago? It's very curious looking back how he was used this year. And that's not to say that he's a juggernaut offensively, right? But he can run into one from the left side. And it's almost like you wish there was a righty option in there because Dominguez is a switch hitter, but he's not nearly as potent from the right side. So it sounds like they have made their decision and that we just don't know it yet. Funny story. I didn't see Verdugo out there at all during the workout until the very, very end when he came out for live VP and he was facing, Will Warren and Scott Efros, those guys that they brought in to throw. And I had almost tweeted out that I didn't see him for the entire workout because I wasn't trying to stir the pot necessarily. I was just curious, like, was he hurt? Was he doing something on his own? Your mind wanders to the Aroldis Chapman thing from a couple of years ago, right? Where you learned he was going to be on the team and then he just left. And that's not insinuating that Verdugo would do anything close to that, right? But it was just interesting we didn't see him, and then he finally makes that appearance. So I think both of them will play, and it's almost a mistake in a sense that they don't have their guy for this series.
Right.
Like it's got to be hard for both of them to not really know going in what their role is going to be. You can't really prepare the same way, and Dominguez has only played in 20 games in the big leagues or whatever it is at this point. So mentally, I wonder what's going through their minds. And Verdugo's about to be a free agent. Like this is a big next couple of weeks for him.
Yeah.
Know that he's finishing off a down year strong. So a lot's at stake for those guys.
When I was watching Dominguez, I saw a guy who was a little bit jittery in the outfield. I don't think he's a bad outfielder. I think he was maybe a little bit nervous, maybe a little bit unused to the major league conditions. But what concerned me more was that he just didn't hit very much. I mean, he especially from the right side, he looked pretty overmatched. He had some hard hit balls. He hit a couple of home runs, but I don't think he did. And just objectively, I'm a fan of the guy, but if I'm speaking objectively, I don't think he did enough to steal that position, right? But he does have some attributes that we know the Yankees like. He has deep at bats. He has deeper at bats than Verdugo. He's got speed. It could be a situation I could envision where, either Verdugo starts and Dominguez comes in if it's a close game and you need some offense or whatever. Maybe he pinch runs for Verdugo. Or I could see it the other way around where Dominguez starts and then Verdugo comes in for defense if you got a lead in the sixth inning, maybe takes the last couple at bats. Any thoughts on that scenario?
Again, my mind goes to everybody talking about this when Dominguez first got called up. It's like, the worst case here is that he doesn't do enough and then the Yankees go back to Verdugo, or it's just a toss-up between the two of them, right? Because you're hoping that Dominguez can figure it out over the last month or so when he got called up, but you wonder what would have happened if he got called up earlier, or if Verdugo had that stretch to just continue playing every day and get hot at the right time. So yeah, I think it will end up being a mix. Maybe it's matchup based depending on who the pitcher is that next day, or who has the hot hand. And that's just, my dad will always say this, that back in the day, they'd have a set lineup every single day and you'd know exactly where you're hitting and you'd have that routine. And these guys just don't have that right now. And I know that's not necessarily the most modern thing with baseball these days. A lot of managers use a lot of different lineups, but the Yankees have had, Judge and Soto in the same spot. Wells has really established himself as the cleanup guy. He's going to be hitting fourth in the playoffs, even after finishing the year 2 for his last 41. Then you got Stanton, you got the righty lefty thing. And if Dominguez or Verdugo are going back and forth, does it mess with that continuity? I don't know. Maybe it's not an issue. Maybe I'm overstating it, but it's definitely something to watch. And that position is a tipping point for them this series.
The save situation says, you mean the Martian isn't Mickey Mantle? Well, Mickey even got sent down to the minor leagues during his first season too. So, let's reserve our judgments until we get to see this kid play a little bit more. But it's unlikely he will be Mickey Mantle, but I still think he's going to be a really good player. Let's talk a little bit about first base, because this is an area where there's no clear-cut guy. I mean, you got Ben Rice, who, he has some pop in his bat, but he didn't hit much down the stretch. He had to be sent down. He's not good defensively. I mean, I don't think we need to really, talk about his defense much. He's a novice. He's learning on the job. Maybe he'll be better next year. Oswaldo Cabrera has played some first base. He made some nice plays, but he was apparently playing shortstop today and wasn't even taking reps at first. John Birdie was taking some reps at first base. Any idea on how they're leaning at first base as we are just 24 hours away?
Yeah, Cabrera did end up going to first. He does this good. Every day. He's got all these different gloves that he'll bring out, and he'll go to different spots. So he was at first at different points during the workout today. I do think it'll end up being Rice, because I think that ultimately the Yankees like Oswaldo more in that flexible off the bench option to make sure that if they are going to burn a pinch hitter or switch things around, that they have him as a security blanket to play literally everywhere except catcher and pitcher, I guess. He hasn't really been used in the outfield that much this year, but that's still on the table too. Yeah. And, you said it. To be generous, I'd say it was an up and down stretch for Rice. He did show the flashes. He had the 3-homer game. He showed that he can handle big league pitching in terms of knowing the strike zone and the patience. And a lot of pressure was on him when Rizzo went down for the first time. But to end up hitting 171, OPS barely over 600, I think it was a little bit of a disappointment when you look back at it, that entire 50-game stretch. I mean, he played a lot. That was a couple months that he was up. But good for him for finishing the year strong in AAA, having a lot of homers down there. And then he's a lucky guy to have a second opportunity here, assuming he does get the start. It sounds like Rizzo could be an option for the ALCS. I'm not surprised that he's not going to play in the DS, because when you break two fingers on your catching hand for a first baseman and your follow through for a lefty, I thought it was even more than a long shot. Boone was using the term long shot for him over these last couple of days. So you hope that Rizzo's able to counsel from the dugout and get him in the right frame of mind, help a little bit with positioning and some of those defensive quirks that we know Rizzo is very familiar and experienced with. And it's a sucky situation, right? You don't have your starting first baseman. So you just hope that Rice is able to figure it out and maybe get hot, and he's going to be down there in the bottom of the order. So you just bank on that ceiling for him and you roll with it.
Yeah, I'm interested to see if Birdie gets some time over there. He didn't really play first base, I don't think, this year. I can't recall a situation where they put him over there, but he's got a good stick, and the Royals have some lefties that could be trouble. So it'll be interesting to see if he gets some reps. We got some fans of Oswaldo in the chat. Oswaldo strikes me as somebody who could come up big in a playoff spot. Like, he feeds off of that energy. We'll talk a little bit about unsung heroes here. Let's talk about who do you think, not named Soto, Judge, or Garrett Cole, has the potential to be that guy who, grabs the moment and, maybe comes up big in a big spot, feeds off the energy from the stadium. I contend it's Oswaldo. I think he's the guy there. He just strikes me as that kind of guy. Also, Volpe had a few days off. Like, typically when he gets some rest, he comes out hot. Like, I could see him having a big game one or big first couple of games. Stanton, obviously, big playoff bat for many, many years. What are your thoughts on potential unsung hero here other than Cole, Judge, or Soto?
So I have a strong take about this that I haven't revealed yet. And I know you had Luke Weaver's picture up there a couple of times. I think he's going to be big for them. I do think that Clay Holmes will still get some big outs much as he's lost the fans, I think, but he's still important to this team. But for me, it's Jazz Chisholm Jr., and you've got his picture up there right now. Just hearing what he's been saying about how he feels like he's always been meant to be in the spotlight, and he's been such a great fit so far, but I don't think he's really had that moment just yet, right? I mean, he had those big games in Philly right after the trade, and he's been playing well this whole time, but I can just envision him hitting a huge 8th inning home run at the stadium in whether it's this series or maybe even later in October, and winning a game for this team, at playing good defense at third base, stealing bases. Maybe he ends up being an MVP in one of these series if the Yankees continue to advance. But that trade deserves some praise from the front office, or for the front office, I should say, because like I said, he's been a perfect fit so far. That was a real hole for them and a glaring concern if they were going to have to continue to roll with DJ LeMahieu. John Birdie wasn't ready yet, and he was a question mark because he hadn't played since late May, I think it was. And Chisholm has really come in and he's been great behind the scenes. Any of those concerns that he wouldn't be good in the clubhouse, I haven't seen anything that would say that that's been the case. Really, that hasn't happened with Verdugo or Stroman either. I think that all of those narratives have been thrown out of the window over these last 6 months or whatever it is. But yeah, I would pick Jazz Chisholm Jr. I think he's going to have a couple big swings in this postseason coming up.
Jazz Chisholm, I could see him taking over a game with his legs. He gets on base and maybe steals second, steals third, scores on a wild pitch. That's the kind of thing that I could see from Jazz Chisholm. I don't want him to get into home run mode because I feel like after he hit all those home runs, he kind of started swinging for the fences, and that might have been why he was slumping a little bit. But it is worth noting, he was heating up right there at the end of the season. And we've seen guys who get hot right at the very end of the season sometimes carry that through the playoffs. A-Rod comes to mind. Back in 2009, he entered the final game of the season. He needed 2 home runs and 7 RBIs to get to 30 and 100. He got them both in the same inning, came out of the game, and then he came out like gangbusters in the playoffs. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think that you might be on the right track there with Chisholm. I'm going to stick with Oswaldo, and my sleeper pick is Volpe because of the rest. I think he's going to come out feeding off the energy. New York kid playing in the postseason for the first time. I think it's going to be great. Top. Yeah, go ahead.
Real quick, you brought up something important that Chisholm does sometimes have that home run swing. And I've noticed that too, where sometimes he'll have these at-bats where it seems like he's swinging out of his shoes when he can still be really effective for them if he's going to spray the ball the other way and get on base. All of a sudden, it's a triple, right? I mean, he's been so effective on the bases. They don't necessarily need him to be like that. And we can throw Austin Wells in here too, because I just wrote a huge story on him being in the cleanup spot behind generational hitters. And that's not easy to do mentally and physically. Obviously, the pressure that's going to be on him. He's a rookie, a catcher, managing all of the pitching staff and doing a good job kind of silencing a lot of those concerns about his defense. And he's also going to come up with guys on base basically every single plate appearance that he has. And that one walk that he had at the very end of the clincher for the Yankees against the Orioles, it was in the 6th inning. They were only up by 1 run at that point. The bases loaded walk. He took some really close pitches, could have chased and tried to hit a grand slam there and be the guy, but he just passed the baton. And that's exactly what they need from those guys in the middle of the order. And last thing on Chisholm, it just stands out to me that he's kept saying that the guys in the clubhouse continue to talk about how they're not going to stop until they get a ring. And he's a Derek Jeter guy. He's been relishing the opportunity to be in New York after all those years in Miami. It just seems like he's going to rise to the occasion. And I think you can't overstate the importance of him, Stanton, and Wells. I asked the Royals manager today, how are you going to let Soto and Judge not beat you? And he laughed. And it's like, we're going to pick our spots where you kind of have to pitch to him. But there will be
a lot of go take your base.
Yeah. There will be a lot of situations where they don't really pitch to those guys. And those 3 that I mentioned are going to come up to the plate with runners on base. If they stay cold, it might be a long series.
Well, here's the thing about not pitching to guys, especially when you got 2 guys back to back in the order that you're not pitching to. Like you said, it creates opportunities because that makes it difficult on a pitcher. No pitcher wants to pitch with 2 guys on base, right? Especially at Yankee Stadium to a lefty where you pop one up and it's a 3-run home run. So it's going to create some kind of pressure situation for, walk up potentially for Reagans. Let's talk a little bit about Aaron Boone. Now, you said in your tweet tonight that the Yankees should not take the Kansas City Royals lightly, and I agree 100%. But let's just, worst case scenario, let's say the Royals beat the Yankees. Will that be Aaron Boone's final series as Yankees manager?
It's tough. I could see if it was them losing handily and the season ended in Kansas City for the 2nd year in a row and the AL is wide open for them to take it. These are good teams that they're going to be facing. If they beat Kansas City, either Cleveland or Detroit is also formidable, right? I mean, Detroit's been playing so well. Cleveland has been underrated all year. They've been playing such good baseball. Their bullpen is incredible. But when it comes to payroll and stardom and history, the track record, the Yankees should walk through the AL and get to the World Series this year, right? There's no excuses for them not to do that. So I've been standing by this all year. Like, if there was a situation to fire somebody, whether it's Boone or Cashman, it would have been after last year, because last year was such an utter failure. But if you have a situation where you have the best record in the AL, the Astros lose, the Red Sox aren't there to beat you, the Rays aren't there to beat you. It's AL Central teams that you've had so much success against for years and years. It's not the Twins, but it's some other teams that you have success against, and they get swept or they lose 3 of the first 4. Something's got to change, right? I mean,
Right.
I do.
Well,
this was a lot of progress after last year. Like, you got to give the Yankees a lot of credit for the roster changes they made. It wasn't perfect. There's still a lot of holes going into this series, right? We're not thinking that they're going to sweep and dominate these next couple series. They may, they certainly could if they get rolling. But, I think this series goes 5 games, and I'm curious to see. It might end up being those intangibles where Kansas City is better on the bases, or the Yankees can sometimes make those defensive errors or go ice cold on offense, other than Judge and Soto. And those are the 3 things that I'm looking at the most. And the pitching, obviously, too. Does the bullpen stay strong and hold those leads at the end? Is Holmes going to give up a walk-off like he did in Kansas City to kind of start that terrible stretch that they had, the summer skid that just kept on rolling? So, do I think they'd fire Boone? I think it would have to be such a disaster where something needs to change. There needs to be some sort of scapegoat. But I'll end with this, right? The grass isn't always greener. And who would they necessarily bring in that would be better for the Yankees to be that liaison from the analytics group and from the front office and be the players manager that's always interacting with us the way I'm sure the Yankees want him to, and being that guy that can foster a close-knit environment? Because this team is very close, and chemistry-wise, I think they're in a good position to go a long way this year. It may end up being something that happens that's not in Boone's control, and then how can you really blame him,
Yeah, well, they did play a lot of sloppy baseball this year. So if sloppy baseball is their undoing, that has to fall on the manager, I would argue. We just got the update that Verdugo will be starting in left field tomorrow per Andy Martino. So that solves that question. You wonder if Dominguez will be on the roster at all. It's a potential that he doesn't make it. I think he will be. But be interesting to see how that shakes out. Max, looking forward to some great coverage. Enjoy the games at Yankee Stadium. I'm jealous that I can't be there, but I'll be here after every game for my audience. Final prediction. You said 5 games. Who takes it?
Yankees in 5. I think they got to find a way. And I know that this KC team is definitely formidable, and they've got Bobby Witt Jr. and Salvi Perez, and their rotation is strong, but I don't necessarily trust their bullpen, and the rest of their offense really isn't much. Yeah. So I've got the Yankees in 5. What about you?
I never do this because I'm very pessimistic a lot of times, but I am not messing around this year. Yankees in 3. Yankees sweep. I think they're going to get to the bullpen. I think they're going to wear down the starters. They're going to go with that old 90s mentality, get the starters up to 100 pitches, and get into that middle relief, which is the underbelly for the Royals. The Royals went 12-1 against the White Sox this year. They were under 500 against everybody else. They're beatable. And the Yankees should beat them. They know they should beat them. I don't think they're going to be screwing around. I think playing the Central is pretty much the only teams left. That's like the perfect scenario. The Yankees recognize that. I think they're seeing red. I think they're out for the kill. And I think they're going to sweep this series, and I think that they're going to go to the World Series this year. And this is the year. I don't know if they're going to win it, but I like their chances. Philly, they beat up on Philly. If you match up against them, I think the confidence is high. I don't know that the Dodgers have the pitching. The San Diego kind of scares me a little bit. I could see Mike King dealing, honestly, against the Yankees. Wouldn't that be something that comes down to King versus Soto in Game 7? That'd be wild. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. But I'm saying Yankees in 3. Max, appreciate it. We'll have you on again as the playoffs move along. Hopefully, as we go to another round, if there's another round. And for me, it's just another night of very little sleep as as we wait out Game 1. Appreciate it, everybody. We will see you tomorrow after the game.
Ball game over.
If you enjoyed this video, please drop a like and give us a subscribe. It helps other Yankees fans find the channel. We're also on all your favorite podcast platforms and social media. Join the community, have some fun. We're here after every game. This is Pinstripe Territory.